Happy spooky season. Oh my god, welcome back. I'm so excited to be here. What do you think of my witch's hat? I ordered it online. I don't know how I feel about it. Anyway, I'm supposed to be a witch. Maybe I don't have to try. So my name is Genevieve Gravel, and you are watching Gigi Says What Now? So today's episode is actually by request. I love it when you guys send me requests, and I thought it was perfect for spooky season because today we are going to talk about Mary Shelley. Shelley was an English author, most known for writing Frankenstein. Excuse me. Frankenstein. 1897. Mary Shelley was born in Somers Town, London. Unfortunately, her mother would pass away only 11 days later, leaving her to be raised by her father, who was a political philosopher. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what life was like for the Victorian woman. Basically, they had no rights. Like none at all. They were born and bred to be servants to the household, to their husbands, and bear and raise children. They didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have the right to enter into contracts. They didn't have the right to own property. They were wives and mothers. Fun time. Victorian women, they had it rough. They had it hard. They worked and were given nothing in the means of respect or dignity or anything like that. And they couldn't even relax and take a long bubble bath at the end of the day. A nice little bath, little refreshments, whatever you like. No. They got to sponge bathe once a day. And when it came to their menses, they just had to find some random rags, shove them down there. That's actually why we say on the rag. I mean, does anybody say that anymore? I don't think anybody says that anymore. But when I was a kid, my mother said it quite often. I'm on the rag. My red-headed Aunt Flo has come to visit. But that's where it comes from, because for hundreds of years, women would just take rags and put them down there to stay clean. Fresh and so clean. Before her mother's death, her mother was an advocate and an activist for women's rights, and later on in life, Mary Shelley would also become an advocate for women's rights. Love that. So when Mary Shelley was 4, her dad would remarry a woman named Mary Jane, and Mary Jane would become the evil stepmonster in Mary's young life until 1814, when Mary met a young man by the name of Percy Shelley. And she was quite smitten with him, and he was quite smitten with her. But there was just one little drawback, He was kind of married. Kind of really married. And this was in a time where divorce did not happen. So a young Mary Shelley and her beau Percy would run off to France together. So romantic. They would return a year or so later, and Mary would have a bun in the oven. Quite the scandal indeed. So much so, in fact, Mary and Percy were ostracized from their community. So you're like, what is ostracized? What does that even mean? It means they were kicked out. They were shunned. They were canceled. Yeah, because cancel culture has always been around. We just call it something new every era, right? Yeah, they were canceled. They were kicked out. They were no good. It was the talk of the town. Huge scandal. Anyway, poor Mary. That baby would not survive. Actually, it wouldn't even be given a name. Not unlike the creature created in the book Frankenstein. And he was also not given a name. Let's dispel a few little myths about this novel right here and right now. Because this is Gigi Says What Now, and I like to talk trash. Frankenstein Frankenstein, he was the doctor or the scientist, the creator of the creature of no name. And there's another thing I was reading, and people are like saying that like the creature was made to be the doctor's like love toy. Yeah, that's not true. Yes, Frankenstein loved his creature. He loved his creation, much in the way a father would love a son or an artist would love a particular work. Um, he was actually in love with his adopted sister and would later become engaged to her. Then in 1816, Percy's estranged wife would herself, leaving Percy finally single and available. It would be later that same year that young Mary Shelley would have a dream, a crazy, crazy dream of a crazed doctor or scientist that would create life where there is no life. And if you think about it, like, it makes sense. I mean, she'd been through all this trauma. She'd lost a child that she'd given birth to. She didn't even get a chance to name it, much less get to know it. She'd been ostracized. All this stuff had been going on in her life. Her life was actually pretty filled with trauma. So yeah, having that kind of deep, dark, kind of night terror, that adds up. It makes sense, right? But yeah, that's how Frankenstein came to be, was through a dream. It's all a dream. So in 1818, the couple would move to Italy, where their second and third child would be born, and neither of them would survive either. God, so tragic. Like, birthing children was a death sentence, either for, the women or the children or both. Like, how did humankind even survive? Like, how are we here right now? It's crazy. They did eventually have one child who did survive, and they named him after his daddy, Percy, little baby Percy. So in 1822, her husband Percy, he would drown in a boating accident, and she would be left to raise young Percy all by herself. In the decade that followed, she devoted herself to writing and wrote a total of 8 works altogether. She was also a huge advocate and component in her husband's writing, in which she did the majority of his editing and promoting of his works. He was a poet and a philosopher. As a matter of fact, when Frankenstein was actually formally published, she published it anonymously, of course, because she's a woman. A woman can't enter into a contract, therefore they can't, publish. So she published anonymously, and a lot of people assumed it was the talk, the whisper, the rumor, that it was actually her husband who had written the story. And the first run, it was published in a very small publishing house in London. And the first run was only 500 copies, a very, very small amount, to get the ball rolling with a story, a crazy story, that in the years that have followed, more than 100 years now that have followed, this book has been both banned and taught in public classrooms. It was banned in Kansas. It was banned in Kansas in the United States. It was banned in China. It was banned in South Africa because it was considered to be obscene or morally corrupt or just all around disturbing. I think that people have always, had an appetite for the macabre. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, you go way, way back into like ancient history. You look at even mythology, and there's some seriously dark stories. In Mary Shelley's life, the Penny Bloods, or Penny Dreadfuls, as they would later become called, was a publication that dove into macabre stories. Either they would be short stories or they would be long stories that would be cut up to be from anywhere between 8 to 16 pages, and then sold for a penny. And they were actually quite popular. There's actually movies and TV series still today about the Penny Dreadfuls, and there's still movies and TV series about Frankenstein today. And I mean, it's really kind of awesome because, you know, Frankenstein was published a full 80 years before Bram Stoker's Dracula was published, which, if you haven't actually read the book, Dracula by Bram Stoker, I highly recommend it. It is a 10 out of 10. Could not put down. Completely devoured it, even though I'd seen several different adaptations of it through visual media. The book is just phenomenal. And then at the age of 53, Mary Shelley would succumb to a brain tumor, and that would bring us to the end of her life. What else do I say? She died, and we still read Frankenstein today. We still dress up as the creature from Frankenstein. Yeah, we still make movies. We still make TV. So that's a pretty freaking awesome story for a horror story. I mean, do you think like in 100 years from now or 120 years from now that people are going to be like, you know, talking about Chucky? I really like 80s horror flicks. I like horror in general. I write horror. I write more supernatural horror. And they're actually pretty short stories. And I'm certainly no Mary Shelley, but you should check out my shit sometime. Okay, I love you. Remember, you are valid, you are worthy, you are loved. Happy Halloween, and I can't wait to see you till next time. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll talk to you next time. Okay, bye.